Hello, friends. I'm Reverend Joe Morrow, Associate Pastor here at Fourth Presbyterian Church of Chicago, and welcome back to the Salt and Light podcast. This is a unique space for conversation with our congregation's mission and community partners across the city, the state, the country, and the globe who are out there being salt and light. People whose wisdom and compassion offer a light that lifts the shadows in these times and makes the invisible seen. And people who, like salt, preserve all that is good, loving, and just in our world. So today I want to introduce our special guest, Carol Sharp, who is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Night Ministry. Hello, Carol.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
The Night Ministry is a Fourth Church grantee partner, and you all are a venerable Chicago institution, an early groundbreaker in the work of housing and outreach to those experiencing homelessness going back to the 1970s, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
And you all are also near and dear to my heart in my own personal pastoral development. I'll say more about that later. But first, let's talk about you, Carol, as a leader. Tell us about where you come from and the significant people and places in your own background that have led you to do what you do today.
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me. I'm originally from Chicago, born and raised, and I was raised in, I like to say, different neighborhoods or multiple neighborhoods across the city. Mm-hmm. I spent a good portion of my childhood navigating the foster care system, where I was displaced around the age of 2, so I was 18 months old, and then reunited with my biological mother, who is not from this country. She's from St. Elizabeth, Jamaica. Oh. And at the time when we reunited with her, she was living in Rogers Park. And so we commuted quite a bit between our foster home that was located in Inglewood to visiting our biological mother who lived in Rogers Park on the north side of the city.
Wow, that's like a good hour almost of commute, if not more, depending on how you're doing it.
It is. And my mother did not have a driver's license, so we commuted on the bus and on the train. We became very familiar with the CTA. Mm-hmm. My sister and I oftentimes will joke now about how young we were, traveling by ourselves between 69th Street and Morris Avenue on the Red Line. And we now have our own children, and we could not imagine them navigating the system the way that we figured it out at a very young age.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Such independence at a young age that you had to exhibit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we reunited with my mother around adolescent years, and while we were reunited with our mom, we still remained very close to our foster family. They became family. They were extended family to us. And so that commute, that sort of transition between the two homes was an ongoing thing. Right? Throughout my teen years, I had the opportunity to become very observant in neighborhoods, the difference in the way that neighborhoods were invested in on the north side of the city, through downtown, and on the south side in my south side community, which I love dearly. And I believe that those experiences truly shaped me into the person that I am today, and which supports the type of leader that I am today. So my roots are in Chicago, and as I moved into adulthood, I learned a lot about how my Caribbean culture shows up in my daily interactions.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, and so that's a little bit about me.
It's interesting too that through your foster family and your biological family, that you seem to have had this expanded village, and I'm sensing that village was important in your development. The capacity to have multiple people within your life to depend on, their wisdom to draw on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's developing the village not only as a child, but again throughout my teenage years, knowing that my mom still needed support in different ways, and I've always found ways to learn from my experiences and learn from each interaction. And I've been doing that since I was a child. I believe that we take what we need from experiences, and we use that to really shape how we then connect with others or interact with others. So when I talk about my upbringing, I oftentimes have to explain it in detail because people will ask questions like, well, you mentioned that your mom passed away. I was like, yeah, but I was talking about my foster mother. My biological mother is still here, right?
Yeah.
And it was in my early 20s that I had what people call like an aha moment. When my foster mother had passed away, at that time I was working at an organization in Chicago that served young people who were first in their family to go to college. And I mentioned that I needed some bereavement time, and she looked at me and she said, "You were in a foster home?" And I remember thinking, well, yes, and why are you reacting that way?
Right.
But I learned quite a bit about the other experiences that my peers had, that other young people who navigated sort of a non-traditional upbringing and the ways that it impacted them. And we all share similarities in that there's a certain level of independence that you just simply maintain. You grow up quickly. You learn how to do things like feel where the lake is, so you know where east is, walking down the streets of Chicago.
I'm familiar with that one.
Right?
Yes.
So there's certain things that you just simply learn how to do because you have to. You don't have much of an option. You lean into independence in a different way.
And I assume that also helps you in many ways to identify with and understand the some of the mindsets that are a part of the experience of many who are served in our community who experience homelessness, precarity on a variety of different levels. They do develop that sense of independenceness and resourcefulness that many of us don't experience. And they also have interesting networks and expanded villages that they depend on. We don't often see them, but those villages exist for many of our neighbors who experience homelessness too.
Well, absolutely. It's community. We talk a lot about how many of our neighbors have to redefine what community means to them, what it means for them. They have to define what's home for them or to them as well. And so we think about that when we use terms like homelessness versus unhoused, right? When we talk about what it means to be in a situation at a point in time and not letting it define your full journey. I learned very early that there's power in our stories. And I mentioned that I worked at an organization that served young people first in their family to go to college. I am first in my family to go to college, earn a degree. And I learned very early in that position that doing things like helping a young person learn to communicate with a roommate while they're on a college campus could mean the difference between them returning after their freshman year on campus or saying, you know what, I want to go back to an environment or community that feels more familiar, even if it's not the most safe, but it's comforting. I know the people there. I know how to navigate it. And now here I am moving into this newer environment and not very clear about that and feeling a bit insecure, but having the opportunity to connect with others who have experienced a similar challenge is what could mean the difference between them shifting the trajectory of their household or generations.
Yeah, there's so much that is riding on the decisions made in those years of higher education and professional development, and to have someone around you who's going to help you navigate those decisions means all the difference. And it also can be inspiring to know that you're not alone in that experience. Someone else has figured it out, transcended it, and now is upward and onward.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about what the night ministry does. We've kind of hinted at it here and there in terms of who it serves and some of your leading programs. Tell us a little bit about the breadth and the depth of the night ministry's work.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned earlier, the night ministry has been doing this work for a very long time. In 2026, we're getting ready to celebrate our 50th anniversary.
Woohoo!
We're really excited about that. And our mission is to provide human connection, healthcare, and housing to individuals who are experiencing homelessness across the city of Chicago and or young people who are precariously housed. We do that in two major ways. The priority programs that we have are centered on our free and charitable clinic, which focuses on outreach, ensuring that we are meeting individuals where they are, where they have defined community. We have nurse practitioners and psychiatric nurse practitioners on staff, as well as case managers who are not only meeting their immediate needs by providing the survival resources of things like a toothbrush, toothpaste, socks, a coat, a tent, right? Food. Yeah. All of those things can mean the difference between whether or not you make it through the night, you know, especially in Chicago during the winter months when it's very cold.
Absolutely. Things we can take for granted when we're housed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so they are meeting their immediate needs as they are doing things like building an identity portfolio, helping them to establish an address so that they can receive their Social Security card in the mail and their IDs to make them eligible for employment or housing when it becomes available. Our nurse practitioners and volunteer physicians are conducting healthcare screenings and setting up healthcare plans so that they can get access to the medication that they might need. And under our healthcare programs, we serve anyone who comes to our bus or to our street medicine vans across the city. We are in more than 5 neighborhoods every week. We are delivering services on the CTA, on the Red Line at the Howard Station, and on the Blue Line at the Forest Park Station. And we are at encampments. So we are traveling to the encampments to ensure that we are meeting needs there as well. And on the housing side, most of our work is in support of youth. And for us, youth is anywhere from 14 years of age to 24 years of age. We have an emergency overnight shelter where young people 18 to 24 can come to the shelter and have a place to sleep for the night. If maybe they're passing through and they just need a place to sleep. They need a warm meal, want to feel a sense of community, family, watch a movie, right? Do their laundry. They can do all those things there. They could check their emails. They could sign up for our upcoming events and things like that. So they come to the crib. The crib is located in the Bucktown neighborhood, and they might find themselves in an instance where they need a little bit longer term housing, in which case they can come back to the crib and we will work with them and ensure they're moved to a more stable living environment, and whether or not that's through a program that we provide or one of our partner programs. And then we also have a program for women who are pregnant or parenting their young children. It's called Parenting with Purpose in the Westtown neighborhood. It is a longer-term shelter program, and they get access to our healthcare services. We make sure that they are getting any prenatal care or postnatal care that they need. They're welcoming their babies and bringing and they have their toddlers at our organization. We're celebrating them. We're helping them to understand what it means to be a head of household, giving them access to life skill development and workforce development and familial connections, so that, again, as they're redefining community or in a space of transition, they have the security of a support network, a safety net that many people are born into. And we also have a program for teens that may not have any of the other characteristics, but between the ages of 14 and 18, they can stay with us for 120 days. Our goal is to reunite them with family, especially at that young age. So we want to ensure that if there's an opportunity for us to get them reconnected to their family, we want to do that.
So you're building bridges between maybe family members, young people who've been estranged from each other?
Yeah, as much as we can.
Yeah.
But, we've had young people who have come to us from other parts of the country. Right? They're journeying and trying to figure out life in many ways that all of us are trying to figure out life. And if we see an opportunity for them to re-engage with family, then we do support them having conversations, connecting to case managers and things like that. And in instances where they need access to an even longer term housing, we're making sure we're setting them up for that as well. We have a longer term housing through our scatter site program, where we master lease apartments across Chicago, and we are matching young people, placing them in apartments in the way that someone who might graduate from high school, move into a dorm, have a roommate, have to figure out how to communicate with their roommates.
Navigating
cook,
all those same things, exactly.
Budget, right?
Be a neighbor, yeah.
Exactly. And we're teaching them skills that they need, that we all need, that we've all had to, one way or another, figure out. If you find yourself in a situation where the rent is due on the 1st, it's important that you have read your lease and you know if there's a grace period, if you need a few extra days to get the rent in. It's important that you understand how to communicate with your landlord, because while they are in this role, they are also people. And that's where that human connection, the way that we prioritize human connection, becomes important, because we're sort of leveling the playing field around how you are engaging with other people by reminding ourselves, our neighbors, and our supporters that generally we are all people. And we never know when we might find ourselves in a space in life where we need to rely on our neighbor. I mean, you think about the number of times, and it's not so much, it's not as common now, but I hear about it more where, a neighbor might come over and ask for something, or maybe you're going out of town and you want your neighbor to keep an eye on your place, or whatever the case may be. We know how to be neighborly.
Yeah.
Right? We have these communities that we've defined for ourselves, and we just never know when it could be us who have to navigate an unfortunate situation. And so it's always important that we lean into what it means to be neighborly. And I'm grateful to work for an organization like the Night Ministry that prioritizes that human connection alongside that housing and healthcare work.
I love that. One of the scriptural stories that we often tell here in the congregation is that of the Good Samaritan. And my observation about not just our congregation, but most Christians who I encounter love to be the Good Samaritan. But the most uncomfortable character in the story for them is to be the person on the side of the road who needs help. We often have the greatest difficulty with asking for the help we need from other people who are there and can provide it. Yeah. And maybe that's one way in which the interactions that you're able to have with the unhoused neighbors in our community leads the way. That they learn or have learned something that I think so many of us struggle to, which is how to reach out for help, how to accept the help of others, knowing that, hey, this is about interdependence. We depend on each other in this society. So I think that that's a beautiful and important thing that you all do, and it creates a different kind of community amongst neighbors. Absolutely.
And we talk about what does it mean for how we are engaging our supporters in that process. So we do quite a bit of educational work in communities, particularly when we are looking to bring our services to neighborhoods that we've learned have a need, and we might face some opposition there. We lead with education because, like you said, oftentimes people aren't clear around what are the actual actionable things that they could be doing to be of support to our neighbors. And the Night Ministry does a fantastic job in our advocacy realm, ensuring that we are providing education, that we are advocating for the legislation and the messaging. Really, it's centered around the messaging that helps people to understand that if someone is navigating housing instability, oftentimes it's not because of it's not because they want to be in that situation or they've sought out to be in that situation. It is a life circumstance that happens, and we just think we encounter life circumstances all the time. So we just have to be mindful of that.
Absolutely. And tell me a little bit about the advocacy work then that you all are doing. What are some of the public policy changes that you all feel could be made to lighten the burden for many of our neighbors who are unhoused, or maybe those young people who are seeking stability and growth in their lives? Well, what are some of the things that maybe we're doing right now from a public policy standpoint that are standing in the way, or things that we could be doing that would ease the road?
Yeah, so we spend quite a bit of time advocating for access to health care. That is, and particularly now, it's just a huge effort that we'll need to continue to amplify, right? When we think about our neighbors and the ones who are coming up to our mobile health clinic and they need things like asthma medication, or during the winter months, they need wound care, diabetes medication. There's a number of illness, mental health, right? Mental health support for individuals that we know, it impacts us all, right? And so as much as we can provide the access to the health care, then we are working towards a solution to a number of challenges that oftentimes we see every day or encounter, right? Perhaps in our commute or in our daily interaction. So we partner through the Illinois Association of Free and Charitable Clinics to advocate for healthcare legislation. We talk quite a bit about the dollars that we are saving the healthcare system as a free and charitable clinic. Just last year, our organization saved the healthcare system $2.7 million.
Wow.
So it's powerful work. And we are one of a number of free and charitable clinics doing this work. But the investment in that and in individuals who are committed to supporting a person beyond the healthcare, right? Because I mentioned that we are building those identity profiles. We're making sure that we're providing a safety net. We're giving them the health care, and we're helping them to develop the life plan or the journey that's needed in order for them to move to a stable living environment. Because if someone has an accident, or maybe it's a small procedure, and they go to the hospital and then they leave the hospital and then they have to heal outside underneath the viaduct, right? Then the likelihood that they'll need to return to the hospital increases.
Yes.
The likelihood that they might not survive increases, right? So it's like there's just a number of risk associated with it, and ultimately, I think as a community, we are impacted by that. So, as much as we can invest in the efforts that are working, and we know that the work of the night ministry is something, again, it's been around for nearly 50 years, and we've been effective in our efforts, and we work very diligently to make sure that we are advocating for those efforts. On the other side, with our youth, we are the leaders of the Illinois youth housing demonstration program. And so we are bringing together our young people who are clients in our program, and we create the space for them to amplify their voices, to talk about the types of services that organizations like ours are providing, whether or not it is helpful, and what are ways that we can deepen or bridge more of a connection to them so that they feel like they're thriving or moving toward the space that they want to be in. It's one thing for me to get in front of legislators or those who are able to provide us funding and say, here's what I think that our young people need in Chicago. And the last time I was a young person was a long time ago, right? And even though my journey is fairly similar to a number of the people who we serve.
Right, you can try to extrapolate, but
it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's still different.
We have to listen to our young people, and they're the social determinants or the sort of intersectionalities that the young people who we serve aren't able, because of those intersectionalities, they are not able to have their voice as amplified, right? So we already talk about, the emerging leaders, the various generations, and the ways in which we can see them evolving, and how they're amplifying their voices in places like social media, where if you're homeless, you don't have access to a phone or the internet, then your voice, you're already, the proximity to amplify your voice is further, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so what the Night Ministry is doing is creating intentional space. We are welcoming our neighbors who have benefited from our programs, and we're saying, tell us, is it working? How do you feel about not only our work, but those other programs they are encountering across the city or across the state? And we're also giving them access to an internship. So they're getting some compensation, they're getting some skills there. We're providing them with some lessons around how to affect change when you develop an action plan. So it's a unique space, and we're really grateful to be representing the state in that way.
Oh, that's fantastic. It strikes me as good organizing work in the classic community organizing sense, and that development of young people and their voice in a democratic system where if you want to affect change and if you want to see transformation happen, you've got to figure out how to get your voice in that conversation. And then we as adults have to figure out how to open up the space so that your voice is truly heard.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Tell me a little bit about, and it could be a particular person or it just could be trends that you're seeing, but tell me a little bit about what you are learning in this work about whether it's young people and what makes for their resilience, or those who are adults and they're unhoused, what helps get them through adversity. What are some of the lessons that you and the Night Ministry are learning from those who you serve?
Yeah. Well, I'll say, from my lens, recognizing that to some degree we have a responsibility to prepare the world for our future leaders. And I lean into that quite frequently because I think that there's a responsibility that exists there in all spaces. And whether or not that the young person, because again, a lot of our work is centered on youth, whether or not that young person is navigating housing instability, or perhaps they are an alum of our organization and they found themselves in a place where they want to then give back to their peers or younger generations, we have some responsibilities to create the environment in a way that it was developed for us or created for us. And so I lean to that. I think about that. It helps me to continue to be open-minded, to listen differently, to listen to messages over tone, to understand that, we might encounter a young person that might be having a bad day. And that does not define who they are as a person. One of the things that I've done across my career, because prior to joining the Night Ministry, I mentioned I've done quite a bit of work with young people first in their family go to college. I also worked at a charter school network where we developed a college completion program for youth as young as middle school all the way through to high school and then beyond. And we spend a lot of time looking at growth and development stages, and then what are some of the things you can just typically expect from a young person when you think about the changes mentally, physically, and emotionally. So we already know that our young people are navigating growth and development stages. And we learn that the intersectionality of homelessness on top of that impacts whether or not a young person is going to smile at you in conversation or not. And those are the things that seem small, but it's why the human connection part of our work is so genuine. Because we are recognizing that our young people are people. They're going through, there's elements of their journey that many young people are experiencing, and there are layers added on top of that.
Right.
And we want to be sure that we are addressing all of those things. Right? We don't want to omit the fact that we're dealing with a teenager who is hungry for example, they're hungry because perhaps they haven't had food or the sustenance that they, would have access to in a more stable environment. And teenagers who are in a more stable environment are also always hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about the food that we're providing, we need to get a lot more of it, right? We need to make sure we're listening to what it is that they might like and what it is that they need. Right? What if we don't think they're going to get access to certain nutrients in the next couple, then we have to be thoughtful about those things. And our team does a fantastic job of making sure that when we bring on new team members, they understand that we understand on a regular basis. I believe that as a community, we want to be neighborly. So I go back to being actionable in our efforts and just simply wanting to be actionable, but not knowing how.
Exactly.
Not knowing what to do. I've had several conversations where someone would say, I'm looking at someone, for example, I see this person, they're asking me for money. They seem to be living unhoused, but then they pull out a phone and their phone looks like it's a better phone than what I have. But what might you do in that situation?
Yeah, what's going on there?
What's going on there? And I said, well, if your neighbor, let's say, you're, vegan, right? Your neighbor comes over and they ask you for milk. You just happen to have milk in the house. You use an example. It might be a poor example. But use an example, right? Are you going to question how they're going to use that milk? Will it matter whether or not they're using it as an ingredient of something that, is meat heavy, that includes meat? Does it matter how they're using it? If the answer is no, then consider that you are talking to someone who has defined their own community. And if you've encountered them on your way to work or particularly in your neighborhood, then they might be in some ways part of your community.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel compelled to support, know that that doesn't come with a list of questions that you've gained the authority to ask or assumptions to make.
Right.
You do it.
Exactly. That you wouldn't necessarily do with your neighbor who may live in a house or an apartment or a condo next to you. So why wouldn't you extend that same courtesy to someone who may be unhoused but is nevertheless your neighbor?
Yes. When we talk about what people may have done in their lives and whether or not they deserve to have support. And again, I would challenge us to think about our neighbors. Like, how well do you know them? How well do you know their journeys, right? And
those traumas that they may have experienced that are hidden. People don't necessarily wear their traumas in the same way that military personnel may wear insignia on their uniform that may tell you where they served.
Right.
Many traumas don't come with that kind of with that kind of public notice. Yeah. So, I think it's so important for us to figure out how to be true neighbors. And I mentioned earlier I did clinical pastoral education through the night ministry, and that was probably one, I think, of the biggest lessons that I learned from that experience. That it allowed me to kind of break through the anonymity of being out on the street together, where we tend to say, well, I don't know you, you don't know me. But there is a way in which the work of the night ministry helps us to identify and see each other as neighbors, as equals, as full and complex human beings. And we can give each other the tools to communicate across many lines of difference through various traumas that we've experienced that we may not know about each other, and yet we're there for each other. And I think pastorally, I learned a lot from being able to serve in that kind of context, because it speaks to the broader context that we live in this society. Anonymity, antisocialness, not necessarily knowing each other, and yet, as we learn through the night ministry, there are ways to know each other truly as neighbors.
Absolutely. I think about there was several times I've gone out with the bus, and I recall a time where I met one of our neighbors. We were providing some supplies. I believe we were in the Lincoln Park area, maybe it was Lincoln Park area. And I asked the question, like, how long have you been coming to our bus? And, what do you know about our program? I just wanted to learn more about him, what has been his journey. He shared with me that throughout his life he found himself in housed, and then he'd found himself unhoused. And it's been more of a challenge for him to stay housed for one reason or another, whether or not it was for jobs or a mental health plan that he needed and didn't get access to. And he said he had been coming to our bus for more than 20 years.
Wow.
To get access to medication. And it didn't matter if he was inside of an apartment, like he had been placed in an apartment, or if he had found himself living unhoused. He knew that he can rely on the night ministry. And those are the learning experiences that I take with me when I think about the young person who I encountered in the community with our street medicine van, who looked very similar to my 20-year-old son.
Yeah.
And I remember him coming up to me and saying, I have a family, I'm not really like everyone else who's like in line waiting for things. And I said to him, I said, we're not here to judge you. We're here to give you what you need. So you tell us what you need and we will give it to you. Don't worry about that, not from me or from anybody who comes out into your community. And then he proceeded to, get back in line and get access to the resources that he needs. And so, there's a certain level of pride that comes along with knowing that you are not at the place that you want to be. And I think people can relate to that. And just like, we go back to the idea of a safety net, that there is an opportunity for us to do something to move people just one step further in the space that they need to be or would like to be, or just a place of safety.
Yes. And that's the benefit of the village that the night ministry provides. It's the village that you mentioned from your own upbringing that you were able to have with these two dimensions of your broader family. It's so important for us to not only survive, but to thrive and to have dignity, to be able to rely on that village. Such an important learning. One thing I want to ask you before we go is, you've been in this work for a long time. You've been serving young people as first-generation college students, young people trying to kind of get themselves towards stability, and now with the night ministry. What is it that keeps you going when sometimes these challenges that we look at, that we're facing as a society, or maybe facing as individuals, that we are constantly coming up against? What is it that keeps you in this work for the long haul? What allows you to have resilience?
Yeah, I developed a great deal of resilience in my personal journey and the things that I've needed to overcome. I have a belief, and I've carried this belief for a very long time, that any person has the ability to achieve beyond what they see, beyond the scope of their communities, or whatever it is they feel it might be limiting them. I believe that that they can achieve beyond that. I believe everyone has a capability in one way or another. My foster father, I talked a little about my foster mom, but my foster father was a pastor at church growing up. And so we had that foundation, my sister and I. Like, we had the foundation of Christ. My foster mom was at the church every Sunday with her testimony.
Churchgoer, yes.
Right. So we were in the choir, right? We dressed alike and go to church on Wednesdays, Bible study. So I have a foundation of faith. And while the night ministry isn't a faith-based organization, we were founded by congregations, and I believe that a lot of the work that we do is centered around the connection between how we were founded and people having beliefs in other people's ability to achieve. And so that keeps me going. Just the other night, I attended our youth holiday party. So our youth programs team will host a holiday party every year for our young people in our program. And they had karaoke, and there was food, and young people from all across our program came together. They were singing. We had a young person do spoken word, and they were celebrating each other. We had one of our moms brought her daughter there, so she was able to run around a bit, and just being in that space and seeing the value of our efforts keeps me going. Knowing the number of young people, so I'll tell you a quick story. I talked about working at an organization serving young people first in their family to go to college. And one of the things that you learn very quickly in those types of roles is that in order for a young person to thrive in a classroom, they need a stable living environment. And so we were working with young people who were learning that they weren't citizens until it was time to complete the FAFSA.
Oh.
And we were completing the FAFSA, right?
Yeah.
We were working with young people who were aging out of the foster care system. Very similar experiences.
Yeah.
And at the time, I had given everyone my cell phone number, and I have the same cell phone number, and that has been a very long time. I would say like 20 years at this point. And every once in a while, I'll get a phone call. It's very random, you know. Every once in a while, I'll get a phone call, and they'll call me and they'll say, "Is this Carol Sharp?" I was like, "Well, yeah, this is Carol Sharp." "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is the same phone number." And it is always a young person who I had worked with years ago, just giving me an update, saying, "Hey, this is what I'm doing now. What are you doing?" We're talking about young people who I started working with when they were juniors in high school, and now they're adults. They have their own families, and things like that keep me going.
Wow.
And it's not an experience that was limited to just that organization. I've seen it across my career as I've journeyed in a very similar space, bringing resources to communities that need them the most. Where you see the value of one interaction, or you see the value of one inspirational thing that you might have said to someone, or just being able to pause and see that there's a space to bridge a connection that is rooted in you being self-reflective. I years ago had an interaction with a professional who wore a certain color quite often, favorite color aligned with an affiliation that they had. And they would oftentimes say to me, "Well, this young person, never comes into the office, or they're not going to be pursuing post-secondary education, or they're barely graduated from high school." You get some people who have these ideas. And then I remember saying, "Well, do you know if they might have a trauma that's rooted in the color that is in your office?" Just, out of curiosity.
Yeah.
And perhaps it might be triggering for them if they walk into that space to see that color. And they said, "Well, what does that have to do with anything?" I said, "Well, it has a lot to do with it if you're not willing to be self-reflective and recognize that there's an opportunity to build an environment, a space that feels safe and feels inclusive or feels welcoming." So, when I think about, and going back to your question, when I think about things that have kept me going, it is the ongoing learning, like learning from our young people, learning from the team and what they're encountering in communities, learning from opposition and what the fears are that exist there, and what are some of the myths, right, that exist there that I can support with clearing up. And it's my faith, my personal faith that I have, and just knowing that I think that anything is figure-outable.
Anything is possible.
Anything, yeah.
It's amazing that you're also able to get those individual testimonies every once in a while of transformation.
Yeah.
I think so much of what we do is about planting seeds, and the harvest isn't always given to us. And within our lifetime, we're in some ways blessed and graced if we're able to even see a glimpse of the harvest in our own lifetime. And yet, for you, you've been able to see and glimpse it, and it's there, and that's got to be a powerful, powerful experience.
Yes.
Thank you for all that you've shared today about the night ministry, Carol, and about your own amazing journey. Before we leave, is there anything you want to share? It could be music, could be a book, an article, anything that's inspiring you right now, giving you salt and light in this season.
Yes. So I recently started running. I listen to a lot of music. I've never been a runner. I tried to play basketball in high school, and I pretended I didn't do very well. But
I didn't do well either, so you're not alone there.
But I started running last fall, and I'm getting ready to complete my second half marathon. So
Congratulations!
Thank you. I spent a lot of time running in all different types of climates, I think, at this point. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because I spent a lot of time listening to music. A lot of which are gospel music, because it's usually on a Sunday morning.
Okay.
So I will listen to quite a bit of Kirk Franklin.
Okay.
And I might get the artist wrong, but there's a song called In the Room, and I think it's by Maverick City. That is a song that inspires me quite a bit. And I'm also inspired, and I know it's not a song, but I'm inspired by this idea that I'm running because I want to and not because I have to.
Amen.
So I lean into that when it's raining outside and I didn't prepare properly and I'm soaking wet. And I've challenged myself to do 11 miles, right, that day. And I'm feeling like I need to stop. It's like, yeah, but remember when you used to run because you didn't have any other options? And you've been designed and placed in this position. And I think about the people who are still navigating outdoors in similar climates.
Yes.
And so, the messaging is really around remembering that that anything is achievable. And there is a safety net that exists. And oftentimes it seems like it's difficult to find it, but it is there, and just don't accept the no's and keep going.
Yeah. And that we are it. We are that safety net and that village for each other.
Yes.
Carol, thank you for being part of our village as a community partner of Fourth Presbyterian Church. I want to thank you, friends, for listening today. I hope you were inspired by our conversation with Carol. Maybe you'll look for ways to volunteer with the night ministry or support their work, or think about your role as a neighbor to those who you see on the streets every day. If there's something in particular that inspired you today or something you'd like us to pursue in future podcasts, please reach out to me at saltandlight@fourthchurch.org. Till next time, go out there and be salt and light for somebody.